A warm welcome to everyone to my interview today on Skype with famous star Soprano Mirusia. I am Eleanor Edwards, a soprano and student of classical voice. I have artist development with Mirusia, and today I want to take a deeper look into the healing power of sound and the future of music. Hello Mirusia.
Hi!
It is wonderful seeing you again and to be able to share our ideas with the listeners. Listening has a lot to do with our discussion today, and I am reminded of a fun fact I learned in primary school about the shape of our ears. Did you know that our ears are a pair of golden phi spirals, and if we place their shape together, they would be heart-shaped, like the hemispheres of our brain. I know that you are working on an innovative program that helps the older brain to remember, heal, and connect through music. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. So at the moment, I am preparing to start some live concert shows for a program called Silver Memories, which starts in a few days' time in the live shows. But for the past few months, I've been doing some radio programs for this wonderful program. Silver Memories is a music and streaming platform and program that is delivered to aged care facilities around Australia, but particularly on the east coast of Australia. And I'm their new ambassador for this program. And what we find with these music programs, because it's a nostalgia program, so we only play music from some from the 30s, but mostly from the 40s, 50s and 60s, a couple of early 70s in there, but mostly from that 40s to 60s era. And what we find with this music program is that music brings back memory. So this program is particularly focused on people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and what we find is that when this music is played, often the people who are listening and have Alzheimer or dementia will react to the music because they remember. And music is very special. There's been a lot of study into music and why it's possible and how it's possible that somebody who can't remember themselves can remember a melody that they heard years and years and years ago. And it's because there are three parts of the brain that actually register music. So if one part of the brain is gone or destroyed by these terrible diseases, there are two other parts of the brain that will still remember the tunes. And
Wow.
it's still quite a mystery as to why this happens, but it's a miracle, isn't it? That music can bring back these memories and bring back happiness and hope. And that's the point of Silver Memories. And it's such a magical program, and I'm so proud to be part of it.
Well, it's wonderful that humans are now realizing the power of music and specific sound frequencies to aid well-being and mental health, creativity, and bring a sense of joy. I am exploring how this comes about, and I note that the cochlea in the ear is a vortex-like spiral tube made of resonant bone. Now, sound actually travels 5 times faster through water than air, and our bodies are 75% water. And sound also goes 25% faster through bone, making our bodies perfect resonance chambers for sound waves. I know that when I sing, I get a sense within my body of connectedness with everything, and I can feel the endorphins released in my brain. That's why I call my Instagram username Elevated Melody. What do you experience, and is it different in your body when you are, say, recording CDs, or when you're in a large stadium with an orchestra like with Andre Rieu?
Oh, Eleanor, I just have to track back and say I just love how you just described the way you feel when you sing, and the way when you're making music, and you probably even feel it when you're making creations like the beautiful artwork that you create and you paint.
Yes.
I love the way you describe that, because it's so true, and I had to smile because I was thinking that's how I feel too, and I'm sure that that's how so many other people feel when they create and make music. And not only that, but when people listen to music, and going back to that, you know, people with Alzheimer or dementia, when they feel the music again, it's that feeling of elevation.
Yes.
And I definitely think that when you are singing live, be it in studio, but more so with a crowd, I sometimes feel when I'm in front of an audience that I can connect more. I mean, we're talking about vibrations here. So when you're sitting in front of a microphone and there's just one sound engineer in front of you and you're singing these songs, it can sometimes be hard to find inspiration to put the emotion and the elevation into the singing. And so when I'm in front of a live crowd of people, and I have to say with an intimate crowd even more so, because you can see the individual faces and you can connect on an eye to eye level, you definitely have that vibe. It's a vibration. That's why when we say good vibes, you know, it's vibrations. We feel it from each other. So when I'm in a room with maybe 300 people as opposed to 3,000, I'll feel differently, definitely. And I think that's when it's optimal. That's when, you know, from that, you know, to about up to 1,000 people is when you get that optimal face value, eye contact. You can literally almost reach out and touch the audience. Whereas in a stadium situation, it's a little different because you're so displaced, you're so far away, and you're such a small little ant on the stage. You can sometimes almost feel like it's a dream, like it's not even really happening. So yes, but one of the things that's really important is to still keep that feeling regardless of the situation. If it's from, you know, 1 to 1,000 people, or from 1,000 to 10,000 people, or just you and the sound engineer in the room, you know, like it's you've got to keep the same intent and feeling. It's very important. And I often, if I'm in studio and I'm recording, I'll often close my eyes to sing, because it just gives me so much more, I would say, power and more creativity, and more of a vibe, to say it that way. But yeah, definitely. Such an interesting way to say it, Eleanor, that when you're singing, you feel elevated, and it definitely is true.
That's wonderful. Some studies I find seem to dismiss the benefits, both health and mentally, especially of classical music, as merely arousal, enjoyment, but I feel that this underestimates music as a true food for the soul. What benefits have you seen in your audiences over the past 2 decades?
Wow, 2 decades. That sounds like a really long time. Eleanor, this past year and a half has been particularly difficult for many people. We've gone through really isolated periods as human beings, and one of the things that, and a lot of people say, I don't like people, you know, I don't like hanging out with people, but as a person, you do need that human touch, that human contact with another. And during this past time, there has been such an increase in loneliness and social isolation that has led to depression and bad health, ill health. I mean, if you think about it, it is not really great for a person to be isolated, to be treated as though they are, you know, sick or diseased when they're not. And they feel fine, but they're still being kept behind a window and behind a door. And so music has been proven to be a beneficial factor when it comes to social isolation and loneliness. And there is now a study being done right now, particularly in the elderly and in the aged care, because these people have suffered the most of everyone else. Because as soon as there is a lockdown, they are the first to be locked down, and for minimum 2 weeks, no one can access where they live, no one can come in, and the only contact that they have is through a phone or through a computer or a webcam. And a lot of people who are elderly or aged, they just don't have the means to work those devices anymore. It's very, very difficult. It is just an ongoing thing, a ripple effect, but music has been there to really, really soothe and heal these feelings. And it has been proven to help and to be a positive impact. And I find this a really incredible fact, because there is just no denying it. When we are put into a lockdown, what is one of the first things that we do when we come home? And we sit there and we go, what are we going to do? Well, we pop on some music, don't we? To pick up the mood. We pop on some television. We watch Netflix and we binge a whole series. But what's included in that? It's the arts, it's acting, it's the writing, it's the costuming, it's the music, it's the whole thing put together. It's the arts that have helped us really to survive. So yeah, I've seen that firsthand, and I have been doing a lot of work together with Silver Memories with the studies behind this. But over the years as well, the past 2 decades, as you mentioned before, I have seen such a beneficial like music has been so beneficial to so many people, and particularly my audience. I have people write to me weekly, sometimes daily, saying your music helped me get through a dark period, or my mum recently passed away and it was your music she would listen to, so now when I listen to your voice, I'm reminded of my mum. Music is so connected to memories, and that's what I'm trying to explain about before. When we listen to music, it triggers a memory in our brain. We all have our own soundtrack, don't we? We hear a song, we think, I remember when I was in grade 7 and that was my favourite song and I danced in the living room. Or you hear a song and you think, my grandma used to play that song on repeat. I used to love watching her just close her eyes and listen to that song. It's memories, isn't it? It triggers something in the brain. It's something very, very special, and there is nothing else like it.
Thank you for speaking on that. How have you found that your audience is reaching out to you in that way and sharing how they've felt about the music that you've given to them has affected you? So how has their emotions that have arisen from their response to your music fed back to you as the provider and the singer of the music?
It really is very humbling to know that when you are singing music and even writing music, I get a lot of comments about a particular song that I've written called This Time Tomorrow, which I wrote in particular for people who were suffering from depression or loneliness or the loss of a loved one. I wrote this song for my audience because I wanted them to know that music will always be there for them. You're not alone, and music is created by another human. So, you know, even if you're listening and there's no one around, there's still somehow a connection there, and that connection really, really comes home when you get an email from someone, I've never met you, I've never seen you in performance, I live in Indonesia or wherever they live, and I've never been there, and they've never been to where I come from. But they say to me, but your music has really touched my soul and helped me through this situation. That for me, that's really quite incredible that can happen. And it's humbling to know that, and in all honesty, it's a little bit scary too to think that can actually affect another human in such a way. I'm only glad that it affects in a good way and not a bad way.
Of course, when Mirusia was with Andre and his Johann Strauss Orchestra, there was a lot of joy and elevated mood. the audience was having a powerful experience and getting quite involved. I know that you've sung numerous Mozart arias over the years, and an original study by Shaw and Rorschach in 1933 found particular neurons fired in response to particular frequencies found in Mozart's music seemed to aid in spatial activities. What have you noticed about Mozart's compositions as a singer?
I think when you sing Mozart's compositions, they're all very technically challenging. When you sing a Mozart aria, you know what you're getting into. It's not going to be easy, especially when it comes to things like the intervals. There's a lot of thirds and a lot of fifths in there. A lot of that relates also to the fact that Mozart was a Freemason, and there's a lot of hidden sort of things, particularly in an opera like the Magic Flute. But it's technically challenging, and you test yourself. But when you've done it, gosh, you just feel on top of the world, because you think, he wrote this basically to challenge us singers, and I'm nailing it. So I feel really great. So thanks Mozart for that. And that's really nice to be able to almost, and this is where we come back to the magic of music, where there's a composer who passed away many years ago, but who wrote these arias that we're still singing today and that are still challenging singers today, and that we still remember Mozart. That's amazing. I love that, and I love that exists. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but definitely you feel on top of the world when you nail an aria like that that's been written in such a technically difficult way.
And speaking of compositions, you have just announced a new concert program called Songbird, A Life in Song. It made me think of some work by a French doctor, Dr. Alfred Tomatis, who wrote that we cannot speak what we cannot hear, and our connection to nature and listening to birdsong increases one's vocal range. Why did you call your concert program Songbird?
It has so many meanings to me, Eleanor. You're completely correct. It has a lot to do with the bird song that I hear often around me. Having lived overseas and coming back home to Australia at regular intervals, the first thing I would notice in the morning when I woke up from a deep sleep induced by really bad jet lag would be the bird song. All around me, birds, which I never heard much of when living in the city, in this medieval city that I lived in Maastricht in the Netherlands. You'd hear obviously birds, but it wasn't like here where you hear all the rainbow lorikeets and the miners and just all the birds that, are typically found in a garden, even magpies and the butcher birds with their beautiful song. So yes, they've always been around me, and I grew up in the bush when I was a young girl, so I've always been absolutely intrigued by birds. A number of years ago, Dennis Walter, the very well-known radio presenter in Melbourne, and he sings, he's always on the carols, he dubbed me Australia's songbird, and it's on my tea towels that I sell as merchandise, Australia's songbird. But it's an honour to be called that, and birds definitely have always intrigued me. The last release that I released live in concert contains an original song called The Morning Bird, which I wrote about a day in the life of a bird, but relating it to the lifetime of a human being. We wake up in the morning, we're born. That's basically, sort of the correlation there. And then in the evening, the bird flies away and goes to sleep. And at the end of our life, we go to sleep forever. And who knows what happens then. But it's that, that and flies away. So, it's that similar sort of just trying to relate them together. So The Morning Bird was my my new composition. And then going on with that, my team that are around me, my manager Robert Rigby, my producer Michael Cristiano, my musical directors Shane Calderbank and Graham Press, we all discuss what's next, what are we going to do next, and Songbird was such a natural decision and such a natural choice, and we've been working on this show for over a year, and Songbird is just such a natural thing for me to do. I'm really proud of the fact that we're able to announce new shows at this time.
Yes, very
and so I'm looking
exciting.
forward to hitting the road again in February with my new tour, Songbird, which will start then and tour later in the year, because I still have to finish my Salute to the Seekers tour, which has all been postponed many times. And I'm also looking forward to working together with Mark Vincent as well in the meantime.
Yes, I'm very excited
next year, and
for
we've got a number of other projects, but the album Songbird will be released in February, and I'm really looking forward to it.
As you would be. Yes, that's very exciting. I was reading about Cyril Scott, the composer and author of the book Music and Its Secret Influence from 1933. He spoke of the role of music in the evolution of humanity and how it had advanced us through the profound effect on morals, history, and culture. By exploring the works of composers such as Bach, Handel, Beethoven, Mendelssohn, Schumann, Chopin, Wagner, and Strauss, he revealed what he believed to be a spiritual collaboration with a higher intelligence and heavenly and Davic realms that evolved people not just through their physical, mental, and emotional bodies, but also through a sensation body that acts as the bridge between us and all of creation. I think this speaks to what I understand of as synesthesia, which is a sensing together across more than one sensory or cognitive pathway. I certainly experience singing and music with associated colours, shapes, and even foods and flavours. And I can use these senses to describe tone of voice or harmonies. Do you find that music activates other senses or memories?
Absolutely, Eleanor. What you've just described is so true to myself as a singer as well, and this is why we also connect so well, you and I, is because the way that we sing is very similar. We visualize things. That's why I was saying before as well, when you're in a recording studio, you often close your eyes and imagine. And it's so true. It is. It's what music brings you. And I love the way that you've just described that as well, and that you've done all of this incredible study. I'm so proud of you.
Cheers.
That you into those things and try to understand why. And I love that. And that's so true to your character too. You mentioned so many of my favorite composers.
Yes.
and the fact that it's described as this kind of ethereal coming to sort of feeling something bigger out there, like we feel like almost like we're in heaven. There's no surprise that sometimes when we sing songs or when we listen to music, we often hear it described as being in heaven, or it's like hearing an angel sing. The amount of times I've heard someone say that to me, I closed my eyes and it felt like I was listening to an angel. I felt like I was in heaven. Those are things that come often. It's often described that way, music, and especially our style of music that we sing with purity of tone, and the composers that you just mentioned, the beauty of the melodies, they sweep us away and often take us to a place where it doesn't really exist. It's just a place in our imagination, I guess. But I love that you've done all of this study, Eleanor, and I'm so, so proud of you and the things that you achieve and the way that you look into things like this, because Otherwise, we don't understand what we're doing. And I really love that you do that.
I think there's a lot going on when we sing, and it would seem that there's a sympathetic connection made upon the earth, in our bodies, and throughout the heavens. And another study, in Greece, Pythagoras taught of the music of the spheres and how the movement of the heavenly bodies could be perceived as a reflection of the intervals of plucked strings. With sound affecting shape and form, fractality is created, a beneficial bioavailable energy. If harmonious shapes and harmonious energy frequencies are interrelated, creating the principle of resonance, when a singer tones musical frequencies in a song, surely the energy would move through the body of the listener and help to realign any out-of-tune vibrations of illness or low mood. I believe that I can use my intention to bring well-being to others, so it becomes an act of service rather than singing just for the sake of it. Have you found that singing in other languages has lent more sacredness to the music or created a different level of fractality of the song?
I definitely feel when I sing in a different language, in particular a language like Latin or in Italian too, I definitely get this, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but it's almost as though something else happens. You're singing these words and you don't, like for example, Latin, you don't 100% understand exactly every word that you're saying, but somehow you know because of the melody and the way that it's been written. So for example, a song like Ave Maria or Panis Angelicus, it's in Latin and it's not a common language, so it's not like we can sit there really understanding it all. But somehow you do. Somehow you just do. And it's beautiful in that moment. Also the fact that when you sing those particular arias or songs in different languages to an audience that doesn't understand it, they still somehow understand the emotion and the intent behind it. I've had so many people come to me at the end of the concert and say, oh, that song in Italian that you sang, it wasn't even in Italian, it was probably in French or something. They just, they don't really understand the language. But they say, that song was so beautiful, it brought me to tears. Well, why? Why did it bring them to tears if they couldn't even understand what I was singing about? It's got to do with that complete vibration and elevation that actually exists behind a composition. And for a musician or a singer like yourself, Eleanor, to bring a composition to life, that's magic. That's magic because you see it on the page, but to bring it to life is something completely new and different. And an audience member can sit there and be so moved by something that they don't even understand. And that is the power of music, isn't it? And I love that.
I've even found that when I've sung O mio bambino caro, you know that it's about a daughter manipulating her father. But yeah, people cry when I sing that, and they don't even know what the song's about. And it's kind of like, ooh, you're crying about somebody manipulating their father.
I know, it's actually,
interesting.
For a singer, it can be quite humorous too, because they go, oh gosh, everyone's crying. But they're crying because of the beauty of the melody and the beauty of the voice and the purity and gosh, isn't that something very special? It's something that only a few of us can bring, and it is really, really quite a magical ability.
Yes, because we carry so much through our voices. It's like we are a vessel for higher energies to kind of reach people and heal them through the music.
Yeah.
Finally, the world has been through significant changes in the way people gather and experience singing, music, and the arts. What do you think the future of music could look like?
right now the arts industry has been through a pretty wild ride. We've kind of been forgotten and left behind in a way when it comes to things like support. And that's a shame, because I feel that our industry is often overlooked as being something that's unimportant. You see it in schools, the first subject to go is music. Sport and mathematics and everything else is so much more important than music. But I don't see it that way. I really don't. And this is why I also encourage people to support music programs in schools and musical tuition and private tuition. Music is such a healer and such a positive impact on many people. There's going to be a massive influx of music on the scene. There's going to be so much more for the public to choose from. There's a lot already happening now, people announcing tours like myself. There's so much more happening. But for people like yourself, Eleanor, I mean, you're really just at the start of a fantastic long career. You're very lucky that you're starting it now and you didn't start it 2 years ago, because I feel also this period has left a lot of people disheartened, especially those who just started in the industry and were blockaded and not able to do what they dreamt that they would be doing. So it has been very difficult for many, many people. It has also weeded out the amateurs whose heart weren't really in it, and they found other things that they prioritised and thought, why was I doing this? Why was I wasting my time? I'd rather watch it rather than be on the stage. So this pandemic has had a really important aspect to that as well. I like to look at the silver linings. I like to look at the positive aspects to something. That's what I always try to do. So when I think about this, I think, okay, what are the positive things that this has brought to us? I definitely think that the arts moving forward will have more worth and will definitely, I mean, do you think anyone's going to do a gig for free anymore? I don't think so. We've learned our lesson. We won't be going back to that anymore. It doesn't work that way. The arts needs to be protected and definitely needs to be given more weight and worth than it has been in the past. And I hope that this pandemic has definitely brought that out, because I sometimes feel like we were really left behind there for a while. But I'm really excited to see what comes out of it now and what things people have been working on for the past year and a half.
Yes, and as we've been discussing today, the health benefits and how it helps with the memory and the brain, there's so many benefits to music. So it really is something that we need to keep close to us and keep supporting, because it really is the food for the soul. So I'd like to thank you, Mirusia, for sharing this fascinating topic with us. Best wishes for the rest of your Salute to the Seekers tour and starting Songbird, which is very exciting. Your tours around Australia, your other concerts, future albums, your work with Silver Memories. Good luck with all of that, and it has been an absolute pleasure talking with you today, Mirusia.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, and to you too. All the very, very best with everything that you do, because I know you're on the road to stardom.
Cheers. Thank you.
Can you see what Eleanor's wearing?
I know, she looks like a golden goddess. Natural voice.
This is my natural voice.